Now, in an embarrassing blow for the Royal Navy, it's been confirmed that a Trident missile misfired and crashed into the ocean late last month.
It's the second failure for the submarine fleet and took place while the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps was on board to witness the test.
Well, joining us now is the journalist who broke this story, defence editor at The Sun, Jerome Starkey, who's actually right now in a very cold-looking Ukraine. Jerome, in a world of Cold War, arms race, febrile environments, the last thing you need is to say, we've got this, huge deterrent called Trident, and we're going to prove to you what it can do, and, well, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, the nicest thing anyone can say about this is that it is embarrassing. That's the word that the former head of the Royal Navy, Admiral Lord West, used to be when I spoke to him earlier today. I think that was the word also that Tobias Ellwood, Conservative MP, former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, also used. I mean, it is certainly an embarrassment for the Royal Navy and everybody involved in the Trident missile and nuclear deterrent process. It is a Lockheed Martin American-made missile, which is normally, in times of war, would be fitted with British-made warheads and fired from Royal Navy submarines. It's a slightly different process for the test launch, and it's that difference that has led the government to say very, very strongly that they still have confidence in the Trident missiles and the nuclear deterrent. Because reading between the lines, they're saying that the crew of the submarine that did everything they needed to do, and they did it really well. The submarine is working. They got the missile out of the launch tubes. It fired vertically through the water. It became airborne, and it was when it was airborne that the rocket boosters failed to launch. And that's the point that this failed, and it crashed. The missile, 60-ton or 58-ton missile, crashed into the Atlantic Ocean just yards away from that submarine. I mean, doubly embarrassing as well, because the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, was on board at the time. But the message that he's delivered today is that he and the government can still have confidence in the nuclear deterrent, that they believe they've identified the problem. It's what the Ministry of Defence described to us as an anomaly, but a distinct event. And they're confident that were the United Kingdom to need these missiles in anger, they would fire as required. And the deterrent, from that point of view, remains unfazed.
Well, the thing is, Jerome, thanks to your excellent exclusive on the front page of The Sun today, I would suggest that most of us aren't feeling very confident in our nuclear deterrent right now. This follows on from about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, when there were NATO exercises and our flagship multi-billion-pound aircraft carrier, the Prince of Wales, couldn't even get out of Portsmouth Harbour. Is this all of our chickens coming home to roost in terms of a lack of investment in defence over a number of years? I think we spend 2.5% of our GDP on defence now, and falling, and we used to spend 7% in the 1950s. Is that what's going on, a chronic lack of investment in defence?
Well, there certainly have been people who have said that we haven't invested enough in our nuclear enterprises. I mean, the most notable voice among those was perhaps that of Dominic Cummings, a former Downing Street advisor, aide to Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He made some fairly sensational claims that Britain's nuclear enterprises, were rotting or had rotted because of a lack of investment. And he was pretty scathing. And certainly those comments had many people very alarmed. At the moment, we spend more or less £50 billion a year on defence. That's somewhere between a little over 2.1% of GDP. Of that budget, around 6%, some £3 billion a year, goes on maintaining the nuclear deterrent. On top of that, the government has earmarked some £40 billion to replace the current fleet of Vanguard submarines with an upgraded dreadnought class, and indeed to renew the nuclear deterrent. That will involve making a new generation of warheads. This is an incredibly expensive enterprise. The fact is, the Vanguard class submarines which were involved in this test are very old. HMS Vanguard entered service in 1994. That's 30 years ago. I mean, if it helps your viewers remember, on the day that she did her first test fire of a Trident 2 missile, there was a song by Status Quo and Manchester United called "Come On You Reds." That was top of the pops on the day that the first Trident missile was fired from a Royal Navy nuclear submarine. It was a long time ago, and these submarines are having their lives extended. The missiles have had their lives extended because the successors have not been brought online as planned, or at least as soon as planned. And, you know, those delays are ultimately because the money has not been available at the time, and things are stretched across defence. And that's a similar story across many parts of defence.
Yeah,
The
you know,
world,
it sort of
people,
unsettles me
the world
slightly.
does feel more dangerous.
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly. It unsettles me slightly when hostile nations have hypersonic missiles that can orbit the Earth, and Putin's going to put nukes in space, and our 1990s tech doesn't even make it a mile away from the submarine. Jerome, I need to ask you before we let you go. You're in Ukraine.
Looking freezing.
Tell us what you're doing there. Have you got any fresh lines for us?
Well, I'm here because, you know, very sadly, it's nearly 2 years since the war started, since Vladimir Putin unleashed that full-scale invasion back in 2022. And it's really a chance for me and to give the readers of The Sun a chance to take stock of what has happened. I mean, broadly speaking, that first year was so fraught. We thought we thought the country and the capital would fall within days. It didn't. Ukraine pushed Russian forces back from the capital, Kyiv. We then saw a collapse in Kharkiv and Kherson in the south. This second year has been much less dramatic in terms of the movement on the battlefield, and really where Ukraine has scored its biggest successes has been in the Black Sea against the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and that's been with a combination of cruise missiles and maritime drones. You know, I'm heading into Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city, which is where I was in the first days of the war, and that city, astonishingly, had repelled a Russian tank assault in the first hours of the war, but then almost as its punishment for that, it endured weeks and months of devastating rocket missile bombardments, and those continue even now. So I'm heading back into the city really to see what life has become like.
All right, listen, first of all,
living in the war.
well, look after yourself, and
Yeah.
in the short term, for God's sake, get yourself inside. You look freezing. Thank you so much for braving the elements to talk to us. Jerome
Brilliant.
Starkey, the excellent defence editor of
brilliant
The Sun
journalist.
over there in Ukraine. Look forward to that report.